let's quickly look at the template here. And this is to be used for your menu branding. So this is going to be an Illustrator document. When you download this, you should be able to open this right up, Illustrator. It's going to look like this here. So what this is going to be is this is going to give you a sort of menu branding page for your menu, okay? And what I want you to include in here is your final mark. So whatever that final logo type or name of your restaurant is going to be. Any colors that you're going to potentially use for the menu. So anywhere from 2 to potentially 5 colors if you're going to need something like that. And then some typography choices that you're potentially going to use for this as well. So this is where I want you to go in and create some contrast within the type choices that you're going to choose. Maybe choosing an option that is a serif, another one that is a sans serif, or potentially a slab serif and a script, or monotype, or whatever those different classifications are, contrasting typefaces that are going to work within the space. So this is going to be included within your submissions for this Sunday. And then you're going to use these within the actual menu design. Once you have your final mark, that will be applied to the actual logo. The colors will be applied to the actual design itself. And then the typefaces that you choose will be used for the actual menu content as well. Okay. So how can we get started with some of this? Briefly, I'll kind of look at a couple options here. So for your final mark, this is where you're going to come up with some names and ideas for your, ideas of names for your restaurant, right? So whatever you want the name of your restaurant to be, obviously this is going to depend on what style of restaurant it is. If you go with the Italian content that I've provided for you, then potentially that's going to reflect that, right? But if you're going with something of your own, then that can be totally different. But whatever that final mark is, you're going to want to come up with a name for that. You're going to want to set that in some sort of typeface, and that will essentially become your logo. Now with the actual colors as well, again, choose contrasting colors, things that feel like they harmonize with one another within the overall space. And for the typefaces, we can use Adobe fonts to select any of those contrasting typefaces there as well. I'm just pulling up a previous example that I thought I had here for you guys. Bear with me for 1 second. Go back one more. It's not here. We'll recreate that. Here we go. Okay. Oh, no, that's not it. Sorry. Well, that's okay. We're gonna recreate this. So again, for your final mark, any of those, names and ideas for your restaurant is fine. Since I'm gonna kind of go with that Italian theme for the time being, I'm gonna stick with something kind of simple. I'm gonna go with I've used this in the past, my Luigi's Bistro and Grill. Right, so it can be whatever you want it to be. Come up with different ideas among that and then start to see what's going to feel best. And essentially we want to set this in some sort of way that we're going to be able to use this for some sort of logo moving forward, right? So there's a lot of different ways that we could jump into this. And we can use resources for the type choices that we're going to make, as well as the colors that we're going to make here as well. So I would suggest going into your Adobe fonts here. So I'm going to open up my Creative Cloud and jump over to my fonts and go ahead and go to Browse More Fonts up here at the very top. And this should open this up in my browser. It's weird. All right, we'll go the long way. We will go right to Adobe Fonts. I'm just going to type in Adobe Fonts to my browser here and sign in. And this is where you'll want to start to look for some different options. You can even go into, some of the, if you wanted to go into all fonts, of course, you can do that. There's things like recommendations that you can look for that might even be of interest to you, right? Things like Western, typewriter, I know this one is band poster pack. There's these different packs that are kind of put together that might be, interesting for you to take a look at. It might even give you some ideas of pairings that could be done for this as well. Classic cocktail menu, look at that. Let's start with that. Let's jump into this. This is just a sort of group of fonts they have coordinated together for this classic cocktail menu, right? So obviously this is maybe a little bit more specific to some certain ones, but it might be a good place to start. They do have some interesting sort of options within here. You can use any typefaces you want for this, especially within the actual titling of your brand or of your restaurant, right? That is the opportunity to use something a little bit more decorative and a little bit more potentially fancy, and use the more standardized typefaces for your things like your headers, subheaders, and your actual body text there, right? So maybe for something like this, for our actual one, I don't know that I'm really in love with any of these necessarily, so I think I'm going to go back to my home, but could work for some of the ones that y'all are looking for there. I'm going to go right back to my all fonts. Now, there are other options that you can do here as well. And this is where we're talking about these sort of classifications. When you're choosing the different typefaces for this project, I would look for different classifications, right? Something that is potentially going to be more clean or geometric, or something for your body copy, but you can also get more stylistic with some of the other options that might be available as well. Maybe for my actual titling, I want to do something that is more of a calligraphy style, right? So I can type in my sample text there of Luigi's and start to see what some of these typefaces would look like in this sort of styling here. And once you find something that might potentially work, then you can activate any of those and use those for your potential logo mark there, right? Without wasting too much time, I'll just kind of land on one that we can potentially do here. Let's see, let's try one more page here and see if something jumps out to us. I want something kind of bold because this is going to be more of my branding. Let's go with this Victor script down here. That looks like. So I've actually already activated this font, so it looks like I already have this, but if I didn't have this activated, I could certainly activate this. And coming into now going back to my Illustrator, I could access this for my actual titling here as well. Christina asks, besides any typefaces found in Adobe fonts, can we also use other typefaces outside of Adobe fonts? I have some fonts that are CTF that also work in Adobe programs because they've been downloaded on my Windows laptop. Yes, you can use other typefaces there as well, Christine. Yeah, absolutely. If you have other typefaces available, I kind of focus on the Adobe font since everybody has access to these. But if you do have others, then that's totally fine. Yeah. So I'm going to use this Victor here, and let's cruise. I've already activated that one, so let's cruise back here. And I'm actually going to do something a little different. I'm going to separate these two. I'm going to make Luigi's its own text box here. Oops. And then I'm also going to make another text box for the bistro and grill, and we'll see why in a second. And again, I'm doing this kind of quickly here, guys, but you can definitely spend some time. I'll reset my essentials workspace. Spend some time kind of finalizing this, right? But I'm just gonna cruise through here. So I'm gonna look for that Victor's typeface that I've used. And I'm gonna make this larger since it's going to be my kind of word mark here moving forward. Now, obviously there's things that you can do here where if, depending on the typeface, if you wanted to use all capitals, if you wanted to use lowercase or something like that, those are obviously options. When you're using things like the actual logo here, the header, especially when it's something like a script, you want to make sure that your kerning is correct or your tracking is correct, right? So looking at your actual spacing between those letter forms Right now I'm set to 0, which actually looks pretty good. So I don't think that I need to actually adjust that up. Oh, yeah. But if I needed to, you could always go into those particular letter forms there and actually, adjust that kerning to spread those out a little bit further. I think these are actually looking pretty good. Other options that you can do within the different typefaces, some typefaces have these, others don't, are looking at glyphs that are available. So if you go into your type options and go to glyphs, this will open up a new window and it will show you if there are any options available for your current selection. So it doesn't look like I have anything available for that, but I do for my S's here. So you'll notice that if I highlight my S, that I have the one that's being used. And I also have this variation here as well, which is essentially just a different style of that typeface for that. If you wanted to utilize that, you could. And different letter forms will have that. So I might have that for the G here as well, which is going to have different ways of connecting. You can see it's kind of subtle. These are all different styles within the glyph options that you guys can use. Some have more, some have others. A lot of times the decorative script fonts have a lot of those. That might be something that you want to explore. So again, I have my kind of main typeface there. Now I have my bistro and grill. I'm going to choose a different typeface for this one, something that kind of complements the space a little bit. And I think I'll probably go all capitals on that one as well. I'm just going to choose from one that I already have within my arsenal here. And I'm going to try to find something that kind of is a little bit more extended versus condensed. Let's just try this one right now. So I'm just going to go with my Futura heavy there. Actually, let's go with a little lighter version of that if I have it. I'll go with my Demi. And again, there's different options that you can do, showing the options of your text and your character here. Obviously, you can adjust the sizing. You can use all capitals here if you wanted to as well by using the all caps option within your text formatting. Adjusting the sizing here. This might be a place where I want to actually kick out, where I want to kick out the actual spacing between the letter forms there a little bit, right? You bring that into the space. And once you feel like you're comfortable with something and you're creating some sort of lockout in here, lockup, I should say. Make this a little bit smaller. Then you can always outline these. I'm just going to kind of take what I have here and go ahead and go to my type and create outlines. And now you can think about this as being your actual mark for your actual restaurant here as well, right? I'm not totally in love with this. We could probably work with this a little bit further, but you kind of get where you're going. And from here, you can start to apply some colors to the space as well. Now you want to start to think secondly about, the sort of colors that are going to be used for this restaurant, how that's going to reflect the overall look and design that's going to happen. And again, you can use resources that are available to you. So we looked at Adobe Fonts. There's also Adobe Colors. This is another resource that you can access. And this has different palettes that you can explore. Even if you go up to Explore up at the very top, some of these will be these different palettes that you can look at here. Sometimes these are helpful to get you started in picking out colors that might work for the overall space. You'll see that most of these have a palette of about 5 colors inside of them. So you could potentially pull from some of these palettes and use them for the actual design of your layout as well. If you wanted to view specific color themes or, go into random, whatever it may be, there's lots of different options that you can use. There's other resources as well, such as Coolors. This is another website. I'll put the link in the chat. It's very similar. It's essentially a color generator that allows you to again, look at different options and things like that. Oops, I'll have to sign in here. Well, I won't go through the whole sign-in process, but essentially it's very similar. You know, creates these different options that you can do. I'll utilize the Adobe. Once you do find a palette that you kind of like, though, that you might want to use, all of these colors have these numbers associated with them, right? These are called hex codes. And if you copy one of these hex codes, the actual number that's there, if you click on this one in particular, it's going to copy that number. You can utilize that in Illustrator. If I come back over here to Illustrator and I select, let's select on my first color area here. If I go into my fill of this color, right? I'll actually go in over here so I can access the fill. You'll notice that right now this is set to white and I have this hex code of 00000, which is actually the hex code for white. But if I paste in that hex code that I just copied, and I hit tab, it's going to pull up that exact color that I was referencing on that website, right? That exact sort of red. Now, if I wanted to do the same thing to this cream color, I could copy that, come back over here to my Illustrator template, double click on my color picker, paste in Command V, the actual color, that the ivory color there, or cream color, and bring that next one into the space as well. So you can literally copy these colors and bring these in and reference these for the actual use within your designs. That can be very, very handy, very useful for these. And of course, you can adapt these as well. Oh, you're right, Christina. I apologize. That was on our stroke there, was it not? Call there. Thank you for the correction. Yeah, again, you can always come in and change the, you know, if it's not exactly what you want, don't feel like you have to stick with exactly the tones that are available to you. You can certainly adapt these to anything that you want. Once you feel like you have some options to go with here, you know, creating some contrast within the overall space, whatever it may be, then I do want you to go ahead and label out the actual decimal code for the hexadecimal code for that. Let me just pick one more here so I can fill out that space. I got a nice little variety here of these colors, contrast within here. So again, going into the color here, I can pull that hexadecimal down there at the very bottom and just type that right into the space here as well. That way I can reference that. And then you can reference any of those colors within your mark and the overall menu design as well. So with the selection of my logo type up here, I can simply use the eyedropper tool, or of course, select the actual hexadecimal code there as well. Any way to access that, I'm going to get rid of the stroke on those. But any of these colors can now be utilized for my actual branding here. Right? And of course, that will be carried on into the menu as well. Any of these sort of characteristics, and it doesn't have to, you know, be. You could bring in additional elements here if you wanted to bring in, you know, some sort of additional graphic elements that potentially sit into the space. That was an option that you wanted to do. That's totally fine too. I'm just kind of doing this quickly here, but you know, it doesn't have to just be the actual typography. If you wanted to have some sort of, you know, graphic elements within here or something like that, that's totally fine too. And, you know, you can always do things like play with things on the vertical or something like that to kind of create some interest. Lots of different options within your actual logo design here. Make sure that, again, you're thinking about the actual, you know, look and feel of what that restaurant is, what it is that you're working with, and how that is going to reflect the actual branding. But once you are content with that, you can then sort of finalize this and start to utilize all of these for the actual menu layout. Right? That's kind of a quick little lockup there that we could potentially use for the space. And I think I would probably go in and push that a little further, but we'll keep it at that for right now. Okay. The last thing you'd want to do here is pick your 2 typefaces for your menu. Now, these do not need to be what you use for your word mark. Okay, if you want them to be, you could. If you wanted to maybe at least stick with Futura up here to you know, kind of keep that consistency, you definitely could. You know, Futura is a good typeface which has lots of options inside of it. So that's, a good choice to be able to choose as far as having those options. So maybe I'll set this one to Futura bold. And then for your other typeface, I would choose something that's going to be contrasting of that. This is going to be something that's going to work for your actual body copy, right? That's going to work for small text as well. So you want to take that into consideration. Using something that's going to contrast this, maybe like a serif typeface that's going to have plenty of options inside of it. Maybe using something like Bodoni or Bodoni Old Style would be a good option here because there's lots of options within Bodoni. It has a clear contrast within the difference here between my sans serif and my serif typeface. And you can tell that, you'd be able to build that hierarchy from there. So that would be kind of going through completing this. Now we can start to apply this towards your actual menu design, right? So are there any questions right now on starting with the actual branding? I'm gonna group these together here. Working with the logo type here. Again, I would suggest keeping it simple. Choose a typeface that you think is going to reflect. If you want to bring in graphic elements to it, that's fine. If you want to do something that, where you're bringing in additional words like we did here, bistro and grill and stuff, that's totally fine too. It's really up to you what you want to use for that, coming up with a title, coming up with a distinct look and feel for that, choosing a color options is going to work, and then typefaces, which you'll be able to apply.